Tell us about your
time with
crazy...
Amanda. I feel
Story
like I
time.
should be sitting like crisscross applesauce on the floor.
My crazy loan officer story that happened to me a few months ago, actually. I had a client that was buying his first home. It was a double, so a multifamily home. And, you know, we were a month into the process, and we needed updated bank statements to show the deposit for the contract coming out. And we got his updated bank statement, and all his money was gone. Like, he had like $500 left. So I asked him.
I didn't mean to laugh here.
No, this is like not, that gets worse. So I asked him like where his money went, and he told me he went to the casino and he had gambled his money away. So I said, well, we've got to figure something out here, you know. I was losing sleep over this.
You got to double down on red, buddy.
Yeah.
He didn't say anything. He was just, you're like, hey, can you send your bank statement?
He didn't think it was going to be a problem.
He was like, here you go. Hopefully they don't say anything.
Did it say like Seneca, Niagara, Seneca, Niagara, Seneca, Niagara?
No, it just said withdrawal.
Just a bunch of withdrawals.
So anywho, we were saving it. We were going to have his family member agreed to give him a gift. So we were doing a gift for the rest. And then we were almost clear to close. We were sending it in for our clear to close, and we got clear to close, and we're trying to call him. Like, the attorney's like, I can't get a hold of him to put the date on. And I called the realtor. I'm like, have you talked to him recently? Like, I can't get a hold of him either. Nobody knows where he is. So she's calling him and to schedule the closing date. And meanwhile, his rate lock was expiring that week too. So he finally responds via text like 2 days later and said he was in Egypt for 3 months to find his wife.
Did he find her?
I don't know. I didn't ask. So we had to let his rate expire.
What a cliffhanger with no ending. So did they end up closing? Like, did it all work out?
They just had their third baby. They're doing great. He hasn't been to the casino in 6 months.
Yeah.
So it did close because the seller was, he was an investor. He didn't want to like deal with it and put it back on. So he just waited, and he came back, and we had relocked his rate, and he closed when he got back.
I need to know the end of that story. Did he find his wife? That's like movie material.
I know. Yeah, I don't know if he found his wife.
You should text him.
I should. Yeah.
Call him right now.
Call him right now.
Introducing Real Estate People.
Hey, we're the Bills! What are you talking about, Willis?
We're the real estate people.
Welcome back to the Real Estate People podcast. My name is Eric Arnett.
I'm Nick Giambra.
And we're Real Estate People. Now, we've already talked about in our last episode how to vet an agent. How do you search for an agent? We talked about vibe, we talked about experience, and we talked about trust. The three most important things when you're looking for an agent. And once you actually find that person, the very next step, before you even start looking for a home, is to figure out what you can afford.
Which is super important because you're showing the seller with your contract, this is how I'm going to be able to afford it.
Right. Like, what seller is going to take a contract or an offer if you have no like substance behind it?
Yeah, the contract shows intent. Like, I want your house. I'm willing to pay this price.
Right.
And the pre-approval says I could actually afford it. And the bank's behind me helping me purchase it.
Yeah. And I mean, we all watch real estate shows and like $1 million listings and stuff like that. And we all have an idea of what we would like in a home. I want 3 bedrooms and 1.5 baths. I want a big yard, fully fenced, all this stuff. But if you don't know what you can afford, then, and you start looking at houses first, then you might actually set yourself up for disappointment,
To expand on that a little bit, it's almost like going to the Cheesecake Factory when you're really hungry. It's really hard to pick something because there's so many options. So setting that expectation around budget is most important first, because no one wants to buy a home and then be like house poor or confined to that home. That's not the goal of it for most people, at least.
Right. Are you a big budgeter?
I'm becoming a budgeter as
Okay.
like life progresses, but it's not something that comes natural to me, and I don't enjoy looking at numbers daily. But
Okay. So you got a real estate team of what, 13 agents, a couple staff members, and you're just starting to budget now?
just starting to really understand the value of having a P&L
Yeah.
and like how to forecast exactly.
Yeah,
But when
you learn as you go.
But when you operate like that, you make more purposeful decisions, especially when you're looking at data and then financial data when it comes to
Yeah.
these things, which comes into play when buying a house.
Yeah, 100%. And so there's a bunch of banks out there. There's websites that you can go to that seem to make it really easy to get pre-approved for a loan and all that. But I mean, what would you recommend as far as working with a bank? Would you recommend going to a place that's just like a simple website with an app, or is there like a better option?
So kind of like how we were talking in the first episode about vetting your agent, like you could vet your bank too, in a sense. Like not every bank is going to be perfect for a certain type of property, right? Some banks are going to want single family homes or commercial assets. So you got to make sure you're in the right place with the bank that like does those types of deals. And then
Right.
beyond that, like again, who do you got to vibe with your loan officer. You're going to be talking with them a lot. Like part of the underwriting process is constant communication with that originator and their processing team behind them. And that could be a daunting experience. Like if you've ever bought a home, you'll understand like the processors are just dropping all of these different requirements on you. It feels like you do the same thing 3 different times, which you do in some circumstances. So you got to vibe with that person the same way we talked about in episode 1.
Right. So when you first talk to a bank, you're not necessarily applying for the loan, right? You get what's called a pre-approval. And the pre-approval, you answer a couple questions and they give you an idea based on the information that you give them in that initial conversation. They give you a pre-approval that then you can go start searching for homes. You have an idea of what you can afford. And then when you offer, you show the seller and that seller's agent, if they have one, the pre-approval. And then the actual loan application comes later, right?
Yeah, way later on. You don't need to worry about like the actual hard costs that come with borrowing the money until later on in the deal. Like, and we'll
Right.
explain that as we go through this podcast. And then one step beyond that pre-approval is the pre-qualification, where you're actually like showing the documents. Like, I make this much. This is my credit score, which is that one step elevated beyond the pre-approval, getting pre-qualified, because it's not just stated, it's proven with the documentation.
Right, right. I think before we get too far into that, we should bring in the expert. I get asked a lot of questions about financing and stuff from clients. And, you know, as a real estate agent, and, you know, just to back up a little bit, there's so many different people involved in a real estate transaction. There's attorneys, there's inspectors, there's bank appraisers, there's loan officers, there's all these people. And the reason that all these people are separate and not all in one is because it's complicated. It can be a little messy. And so to have people who spend 24/7 worrying about like their lane, it's actually when you can put together a good team, it's great. So when somebody asks me a question, I can give them the basics of getting their pre-approval, but there comes a point where I'm just not the person to answer some kinds of questions. And so we always bring in a professional to help. And one person that I always call, especially when I first got started, one of the first people that I met as a loan officer, I would text her and call her like pretty much anytime I had a question. If a client asked me a question and I didn't have the answer, I would say, "Oh, let me get an answer for you," and I would call the person that we actually have here today, and she's still my go-to person to ask about, you know, loan stuff and finance and all that. Her name's Amanda Bernardini, and she's joined us today. So thanks, Amanda, for being here.
Hi guys, thanks for having me.
Welcome to the show.
How do you feel about me calling you the finance queenie? Amanda Bernardini,
I
the
prefer
finance queenie.
princess, to be honest with you. Yes, they call me the princess.
The Lone Princess.
Mm-hmm.
How'd you
Yes.
get that nickname?
I don't know. I have to. I'm very particular. I have to have things a certain way at all times, and I expect a certain, level of service from the people I work with.
Yeah, one of the things I love about you, Amanda, is that you're so personable. and you give clients your cell phone pretty much. And so they can always contact you, text you, call you. That's what I do like a lot of times. And back to the conversation about going through a website or an app or something, I love the personal touch of having someone who's local, who knows the market, and who you can actually text, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely a 24/7 job. I mean, even last night, somebody texted me at like 11:30, one of my clients, and it's just normal,
Right.
You've always got to be tuned in for sure. It's the biggest purchase, of these people's lives. So there's a lot of anxiety going on. And, when they have questions, they expect answers, quickly. So, and a lot of times you guys are looking at houses on the weekends and you need something quick. And, some banks don't open until Monday at 9 a.m. So you really have to be tuned in and accessible in this business. So,
And the loan originator, like a lot of it is sales.
Yeah.
So you when you're in sales, you have to always be on.
right.
It's a constant process to be in sales because you're filling a pipeline. You're looking for more opportunities. That's part of the role.
Yeah.
You're super curious and you're customer satisfaction driven. And that's why you want to be on all the time and why we enjoy it in a sense, because at the end of the day, you're helping people.
Right.
And what's the difference if it's 8 a.m. or 11 p.m.?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a tough grind sometimes being a salesperson, but it's so
Definitely.
rewarding and it's so fun. And that's why we all do what we do. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? A little background?
Yeah, I mean, I actually landed into the business on accident. I was supposed to be going to grad school for clinical psychology, and I did one of those things where I was like, I'm going to take a year off, and I landed at a local bank, Evans Bank, and I remember the first year I was there, I was like carting totes of like people's like files of mortgages like in and out of like their vault and like making like labels on their label maker. So I definitely started ground up for sure in mortgages, and I worked my way and I processed for about 8 years. And processing is the person that, collects all of the financial documents once you're actually in contract. And then from there, I started dipping my toe in the sales world of mortgages, and I've been full-time sales. This will be my third year now, full-time.
So you started off as like a grunt, pretty much. Like, hey,
I
go
would
make
say
copies
that.
of this.
I would say I was definitely a grunt.
Yeah. And then was there somebody who helped you to start dipping your toe in the next thing that you got involved with?
I think there was a lot of opportunity at my first job because they were really struggling and they were being audited by the OCC at the time. So they really needed some help. So I started doing like quality control work and things that, I wasn't really hired for. And then from there, I went to Wells Fargo and ultimately like took the next step from there. So I think the fact that I was in a situation where they just needed a lot of help, and it allowed me to like get some more experience and work on things that I probably wouldn't have worked on at that time,
I think when thinking about the job, like loan originator is the first person you talk to when you go to get a mortgage. Then you go to the processing and underwriting department. So loan originators, who are the first people you talk to, when they have experience as processors, it makes the process so much easier for the consumer because you're able to handle the stuff at origination that is going to potentially be an issue during processing. So they could problem solve those issues that they know are coming at the beginning, which at the end of the day is going to make a smoother transaction for them because it's not going to be all this angst in the middle of it. You handle it all up front. And that's what Amanda does really well with people is she tackles those potential issues at the beginning.
They do. I don't know if I can say this, but they call me the fix-it bitch too, So
Absolutely, you can.
The fix-it bitch
like
princess.
that.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it definitely gave me a good background. And to be honest with you, I didn't see myself ever moving into that sales role because it was very scary and nerve-wracking for me because I'm a very financially conscious person and it's a different compensation structure. And I think the only reason I did it was because I randomly had opened up a bakery at one time and I was like, oh, I'll just do this on the side. And then that was really what ultimately made me make the move, because I would have been really nervous to do it otherwise.
How come so many people in this industry like do it on the side? Like you hear that a lot of times, even from the realtor perspective. You just mentioned it in the lending world. I don't know many lawyers that do it on the side. Well, it's sometimes it feels like in these transactions, there's lawyers that do it on the side, but there's a lot of people in the industry that do it on the side. And then you miss that when you're vetting people out to who you should work with to help you be most successful. Like you lose that a little bit, that expertise, because they're not in this full time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I want to get to the pre-approval process, but I think, I have a couple of friends when I first got into real estate and I just dove in full time, that one of the concerns that they had, or maybe, they shared the concerns that they would have doing that, is that you don't have the steady income. The only way we're paid is through commission. And so a lot of people, maybe they're just not financially ready to make that dive. So they start off with a part-time job. I mean, we have people on this team that are bartenders and stuff, and with the hopes of going full-time. And so I think just that consistent income, there's a sense of security there. But
especially if you have families and responsibilities beyond yourself as an individual.
Yeah. But it also holds you back. I mean, when I dove head
you came
first
in
into
full time and you have full.
I have 3 kids,
a
a dog, and a house, and everything. And so for me, there was not only something to prove, but there was a lot on the line for me, and that really pushed me to be successful.
And you are a great example of someone who could have came in part time because of everything you had going on, but you dove head first. You did the work, and it paid off so far.
Yeah, I think so. So let's talk about pre-approval. So, somebody finds us, right? We're the right people for the job. And then we advise them to go and talk to the bank, talk to a LO, loan officer, and get pre-approved. Can you just walk us through that process, the first time they call you, all the way through like when they're starting the search for a home?
So when I first talk to somebody, I like to take some time to just learn about what their goals are long term, just to find a little bit more about them. It helps me place them into, there's so many products out there. So it helps me kind of drill down, okay, what is going to be the best mortgage product for this person and what their long-term goals are. So we have that conversation first. And then it's really just going into, I take their information. I either allow them to fill out an application themselves, or if they prefer, I take it from them verbally. And the application basically consists of the basics: your name, your social security number, your date of birth, your income information, your income history, where your money is, how much you have. But really, in that initial phone conversation, even if you're filling the application on your own, I really already have an idea of how much money you have, what you're looking to do, what your income is. Like, I pretty much already know that in advance.
That's because of that first conversation.
Because, yes, we're having that conversation. Like, what's important to you? Not a lot of money for closing, or do you have a big down payment and you're more concerned with the actual monthly payment? So, like, all of that stuff is done in that initial phone conversation. But then, yes, we'll do an application, and the next step would be to collect documents. I always tell people, you guys talked about the difference between a pre-qualification and a pre-approval. I think if you're going online and just putting your info in and a pre-qualification is popping out, that's very, very scary to me, because, there's a lot more to it than that, and potential pitfalls that can be like recognized by actually looking at everything and collecting the documents. So we definitely do that. And I think it's important.
So I'm just going to be honest. I'm still a little bit fuzzy on the difference between a pre-qual and a pre-approval.
I think we said it backwards based on what Amanda just said. All right, so always default to your loan officer for your mortgage-related questions.
That's why we have you.
So pre-qualification is just when you're, putting your information in, they're pulling your credit, and you're getting a pre-qualification. It's not based on any sort of documentation review. Pre-approval, which is really the only thing we do. We don't even mess with pre-qualifications in very rare circumstances. That's when the bank will actually review, like we will review your pay stubs, we'll review your bank statements, your W-2s. Just a prime example, something that happened recently is somebody applied and put their income was, I don't know, $100,000, and they said they were, employed by a local company here. Well, when we reviewed it, it turns out
They
that
didn't have a job.
no, yeah. No, literally, that's happened before too. No,
my God.
they were all commission and they just started all commission. So when you go from salary to commission, you have to have some history there, or we can't use any sort of income for you. So just little things like that. It's very, very important to review those documents for pre-approval.
And it's important for all parties involved in the transaction, because if you don't do this stuff at the beginning, it's going to come up at some point, like we talked about earlier, when you're actually applying for the loan. And then at that point, if it doesn't work out, now you have a seller who's not where they're not going to get to where they're trying to go with this person that they committed to. You have a buyer who's not going to get what they desire at the end. Then you have some professionals that, invested a lot of time and energy into that situation for it to fall apart 45 days down the road.
Yeah, kind of wasting everyone's time.
And that's
Right.
what we're trying to avoid in this industry a lot is not wasting people's time, right? Because if they have unrealistic expectations, they're going to be disappointed. If they're disappointed, what is that level?
Right.
They're going to feel that level of service wasn't there. So that's awesome that you don't even issue the pre-quals.
Yeah, we really don't. Like I said, very, very rare circumstances. Like if it's a repeat client and I know them, it just depends on the situation. But another thing I was going to say is like we also have like a third step in some cases. Like if I have, a situation where there's some cause for concern or questions that I think might come up, we'll take it a step further and actually send everything to an underwriter, which is ultimately the credit approver, the person that's going to be getting the file once you are in contract. So we do that in those cases to make sure that there's not going to be any issues down the line if we see something that might be concerning or questionable.
That's a good way to protect your reputation as a loan officer.
Right.
Because the last thing I'm sure you want is down that road that deal falls apart and now everyone's looking at the lender like, well, you gave them the pre-approval and now you're saying you can't do this?
Exactly. Yes.
That's not a good spot to be in.
Nope.
So then what? I mean, so they talk to you, they fill out the form, and then you issue them.
Yep, the
document?
pre-approval, yep. And I personally, I don't, everyone works differently, but I stay in pretty close contact with my clients as they're searching and their realtor. The reason being is because, even to your point, you'll have a set budget at this point. You'll kind of know what area you're looking in and what price point. But as you guys know, one house could be completely different from the next in terms of payment and situation because of, especially with the taxes. So, my clients sometimes will text me like, hey, Amanda, I really like this house. We're going to put an offer in. Can you run me the numbers? And we'll go through and I'll give them an estimate so that they know, in advance, okay, if they actually get this house and they're moving forward, okay, I know this is what I'm going to need for my down payment. This is what I'm going to have as a monthly payment.
Would you recommend that a client contacts you before offering on every house?
That's situation dependent. If you have a second time home buyer that knows and isn't concerned about $100 or $150 a month, and, I find that those clients typically don't need that extra hand holding. But first time home buyers that, are very sensitive to $50, $60 up or down and $1,000 up or down on the down payment, those clients typically will, ask me to run numbers. I would suggest them to anyways too. What
else? Anything else about the process? I mean,
Hard costs. So when people are trying to get an idea just generally off the top of their head, right? Everyone's going to have a down payment as part of the loan product they're going for, which could be 3.5%, 5%, 10% down. Beyond that down payment percentage, how much physical cash besides that should a buyer expect to bring to closing on a regular basis?
So it's a tough question, but I'll just tell you, I usually break it up in 3 different components. You've got your down payment, which, as you said, it differs in every situation. Then you've got your tax and insurance initial escrow. So if you're you pay that in your monthly mortgage payment every month, but you have to have 1 year up front. So if you're buying a house that has $5,000 a year in taxes, then you're going to figure, okay, for my initial escrow deposit, I'm going to need $5,000 up front. In addition to that, there's the hard closing costs. In New York, it's a little different. There's attorneys, so you have to pay both the bank and the buyer fee for the attorney. You have to pay New York State mortgage tax and recording fees for the mortgage, the title insurance, which protects you from the liens on the house, any potential liens on the house, your bank fee, your appraisal fee, anything you can think of. I would say on a $200,000 to $300,000 house, you're looking at $8,000 for that. So that just gives you guys an idea. It's the more expensive of a house you buy, the more those fees are going to be, the higher the taxes, the higher the mortgage tax. So
that's $8K in just hard closing costs. Then
Correct.
Your escrows, which are your taxes and your
Right.
insurance paid upfront at closing, then your down payment.
correct.
So if it's 5% down, 5% of your loan amount, if your taxes are $2,000 and your insurance is $1,000, that's an additional $3,000.
Right.
And then what those hard costs are,
right. Exactly.
the
And-
cost of borrowing the debt. Right. Someone's lending you money, you have to pay them sometimes.
Right.
But it's interesting the buyer pays the bank's lawyer fee.
Yeah. You know what I'm thinking is a lot of people don't like to admit when they don't know something,
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it comes to finance. Like it can be embarrassing to not know the terms and not know like the lingo.
Right.
And I always recommend to my clients to always ask. I mean, we're talking right now, and there's some things that are even confusing to me.
right.
And so for a first-time home buyer, it's like talking another language,
Yeah, especially for first-time home buyers, because there's so much information out there, especially on social media, that's like, oh, buy this house for $2,000, so I think when I talk to first-time home buyers, I tell them all the costs without any sort of, credits, grants, and everything like that. We have programs because not every first-time home buyer has $20,000 to close on a new house. So, lenders will have, grants, closing cost loans, we'll build in seller credits. So, not to confuse everyone and go down all those paths, but there's available options to first-time home buyers to alleviate some of those, costs. But it's important to know that no matter what you're seeing out there on social media or whatever, that, wherever you go, whatever bank you call, those are all costs that, are going into it, regardless of what grants or concessions or credits you're getting.
Right.
And I think that's what makes the difference between a good and a great loan officer who's going to match you with the right product, understand your motivation, then match you with the right product, and then go down the grant and credit routes and what else is out there and available to you as a purchaser. And that's what makes you such a great asset to our team, to our agents, and to our clients.
Yeah.
And we can't do what we do throughout the course of the day without leaning on people like Amanda. So Amanda, where can people find you if they're looking to touch base with you?
Most people will call me on my cell phone. So
Cell phone?
yeah, or email.
We'll include Amanda's cell phone and Amanda's email with our post-production marketing of this podcast.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and I'm sure that there's, a lot of the stuff that you described, you probably have some resources in PDF form or some downloadable
absolutely.
stuff that we can
Yep.
throw in the show notes too.
For sure.
You more Instagram, Facebook, Twitter? What's your go-to social
mostly
source?
Instagram and Facebook.
Instagram and Facebook, Amanda Bernardini.
What's your Instagram? It's
Funds with Muns.
Funds with Muns.
Yes.
It's an easy one to remember.
Bonds with months.
And again, if you have questions about this stuff and you're working with someone like Amanda, just ask. If your loan officer is saying something that doesn't make sense to you, don't pretend that you know what they're talking about.
Right.
Just say, can you please break that down for me? Can you please explain? And keep asking until you at least have enough of a grasp on it to move forward with confidence.
Right.
Thanks so much for sharing, Amanda. Glad to
Thanks
have
for
you.
having me,
Appreciate your
guys.
time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Unclear about interest rates, down payments, closing costs? There's mortgage companies out there to help you.
There's a ton of them. I mean, you just do a quick Google search and there's like millions, if not trillions.
Whether you're buying local or cross country, there's a ton of options.
Yes, it's true. But cross country is one of the best in the biz.
They can help you understand everything there is to know about banking.
They're local, they're friendly, they're knowledgeable. Couldn't recommend them more highly.
Cross country mortgage.
Give them a call.